One toll, one night, one decision, billions at risk. It started just after midnight, in the pitch-black silence of the Strait of Hormuz, the world's busiest and most dangerous oil artery. A string of encrypted radio messages ricocheted between passing tankers and Iranian patrol boats. You want to cross? There's a new price. And a new currency. In one move, Iran converted the world's bloodline of oil into a pay-per-view poker game. Accept the toll, or risk being stranded in one of the most volatile waters on Earth. For 47 years, the world believed even the boldest regimes would never push the oil markets past the brink. Tonight, that myth evaporated. Tankers loaded with crude sat locked in place, their captains caught between accepting Iran's demand payment in Chinese yuan or in digital coins, or betting their entire cargo that the US and its allies would find a way to unlock the bottleneck. For the first time in decades, the safe flow of energy was a live hostage. But what almost no expert, analyst, or leader predicted is how quickly the entire game would spin off its axis. While the headlines screamed about embargoes, blackmail, and a looming energy crash, one country saw the opening and made a move that would flip the map overnight. The United Arab Emirates didn't just break ranks with OPEC. They detonated a decades-old status quo, triggering a chain reaction no one can take back. Why should you care? Because whatever unfolds in the next 72 hours could redraw borders, reset prices at your local gas station, shake global stock markets, and force every world leader to answer questions they were never prepared for. This isn't headline news. This is the moment the world's energy game changed forever, for nearly half a century. The world's economic pulse has relied on a single narrow waterway, the Strait of Hormuz. Just 21 miles wide at its tightest pinch, yet more than a third of all seaborne oil and a crucial share of global natural gas pass through here each day. This slender passage, flanked by Iran and Oman, is not just geography, it's economic destiny for dozens of countries. To understand why the events of tonight matter so much, you have to grasp what's happened here before and why this new crisis is unlike anything the oil markets have ever faced. Go back to 1973. The first major oil shock. A coalition of Middle Eastern exporters, angered by Western policies, turned off the tap. Oil quadrupled in price almost overnight. The world panicked, gas lines stretched for blocks in America and Europe. Factories went dark. It was a lesson in vulnerability, the kind of leverage a handful of states could wield over the daily lives of billions. The Strait of Hormuz, even then, was the choke point. Through wars, threats, and standoffs, it became an unspoken rule. No one would dare close it for real. Even when Iran fought Iraq in the 1980s tanker war, and even when the US Navy intervened, oil still flowed. Why? Because blocking Hormuz wasn't just an economic weapon, it was the nuclear option, mutually assured destruction for all. Iran knows this. It's threatened to turn off Hormuz many times, using the threat as a geopolitical bargaining chip. But the global energy map has evolved. New technology, shale booms in the US, alternative routes in Russia and the Caucasus all have made the world think it was safer than before. But was it? Underneath, flows through Hormuz have only grown, not shrunk. The margin for error is thinner than ever, and this crisis isn't just an oil embargo or another war of words. This time, cash flow and control have converged in a way the world's never truly prepared for. The old rules are gone. As the world stands on edge, tonight isn't a repeat, it's a whole new game, with new players rewriting the script in real time. Iran chose a moment when oil prices were already twitchy and the world was distracted by wars elsewhere. Suddenly, anonymous tanker captains received a chilling transmission. All transit through the Strait of Hormuz now requires payment 1 per barrel, but only in Chinese yuan or stablecoins. No payment, no passage. Overnight, the greatest trading artery on Earth became a toll road controlled not by international law, but by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. But it wasn't just radio threats. Drones buzzed low over major lanes, and the dark, menacing shadows of sea mines drifted dangerously close to busy shipping routes. On March 1st, 2 tankers found their navigation systems jammed. Days later, a vessel flagged to Greece was escorted under duress to the Iranian coast. Global satellite trackers saw dozens of tankers begin to circle, stall, or drop anchor far from the Strait. 700 million of oil sitting, quite literally, on hold. The world's markets instantly convulsed. Within 18 hours, Brent crude futures jumped from $87 to $104 per barrel, the largest single-session spike. Since the pandemic crash, the uncertainty spread beyond oil. Shipping insurance premiums for the Persian Gulf shot up by 300%. Ships not even headed for Hormuz found their voyages repriced, their cargoes suddenly war-risk exposures. Data from Clapler, the maritime intelligence giant, confirmed traffic had plunged to just 15% of normal. Iran made its bet clear, forced the West and its Gulf rivals to the negotiating table, not through open war, but by squeezing supply, demanding new rules, and most provocatively, sidestepping the dollar for yuan and digital coins. This was more than sanctions busting. It was currency warfare, a challenge to petrodollar supremacy. Global reactions ranged from panic to defiance. China quietly paid up, wanting oil to keep shipping home. The European Union called an emergency energy summit. The U.S. Navy announced protective operation deployments, but stopped short of immediate strikes. OPEC members whispered behind closed doors, uncertain whether to support Iran or distance themselves. Leading analysts from Bloomberg described Iran's move as the most unpredictable flex in decades. Business Standard noted, no precedent exists for demanding transit fees in cryptocurrency at this scale. What made the world freeze wasn't just the toll, it was the brutal realization. If Iran could turn global oil from a shared resource into a hostage, what would happen if more nations learned to do the same? The stage was set for crisis and the countdown had begun. The moment Iran flipped the switch and demanded payment for safe passage, the global oil market's heart skipped a beat. Newsrooms from New York to Singapore lit up with red alerts. Hormuz blockade imminent? World faces largest oil shock in decades. Market traders who start their days watching price charts suddenly found themselves refreshing live ship traffic maps and scrolling security bulletins, trying to calculate just how much oil was now stranded. Almost instantly, Brent and WTI prices soared by double digits, echoing through gas stations, airline hubs, and manufacturing floors worldwide. Top refineries in Asia and Europe were caught off guard, frantically calculating when their next oil shipment would or wouldn't arrive. Around 30 supertankers, clustered just outside Iranian radar range, sat in silent, nervous limbo. Each lost hour meant millions disappearing from open market value, every captain and crew member anxiously listening to static-filled radio channels for news. Insurance companies, blindsided by a risk event no actuary had ever modeled, slammed war risk clauses onto Persian Gulf policies. Overnight, premiums went from $300,000 to nearly $1 million, sparking concern that some small operators might go bankrupt before even leaving port. Some major shippers pulled ships out entirely, unable to justify the risk. Others, especially those with cargo already in transit, simply gambled and waited. Governments moved cautiously. The White House convened emergency virtual G7 talks, but open disagreement emerged over how to respond: direct military action, aggressive sanctions, or quiet backroom negotiation. EU leaders gave urgent press statements calling for de-escalation even as their diplomats made discreet inquiries to Moscow and Beijing, hoping for a middleman to break the ice with Tehran. Japan and India began drawing down their strategic reserves, the first sign that true panic was spreading. Meanwhile, traders obsessed over a simple question: who would break first? Would Western powers force the issue militarily? Would OPEC rally to Iran or turn its back? For days, headlines kept ticking upward. Commentators compared the standoff to the darkest days of the 1970s, and ordinary people waited for the next shoe to drop at the gas pump. Then, in a move almost no analyst had forecasted, the United Arab Emirates, quiet, reliable, and always cooperative, suddenly stood up, walked out of OPEC, and did what the world's best-resourced governments were too cautious to even threaten. The spell was broken, and a global game reset began overnight. In the middle of a tense, sleepless night, while markets, ministers, and tanker captains watched for anyone to blink, the United Arab Emirates made a move so bold it redrew the energy chessboard in a single stroke. Abu Dhabi didn't just issue a press release, it called a live, unscripted news conference. The world watched. As the UAE's energy minister, with just 4 words, detonated a decades-old protocol: "We're leaving OPEC, effective immediately," the impact was seismic. For nearly 60 years, OPEC has stood as a cartel, a gatekeeper wielding unmatched power over supply, price, and global leverage. Every decision, especially in crisis, has been measured in backroom negotiations, quiet collusion, and cautious consensus. The UAE broke that tradition in less time than it takes a supertanker to turn at sea, but it wasn't just talk. Within hours, construction crews in the desert accelerated work on the Fujairah pipeline, an energy lifeline snaking from Abu Dhabi's vast oil fields straight to the open waters of the Gulf of Oman, bypassing the Strait of Hormuz entirely. The pipeline, designed originally as a backup, was thrust into the spotlight as the world's fastest. Plan B satellite imagery showed trucks and machinery gritting the sand near the export terminal, lit up under floodlights as round-the-clock crews raced to expand capacity. Diplomatically, the UAE doubled down, sending delegations to India, China, and Europe, guaranteeing stable oil to critical trading partners regardless of what happened in the strait. As the UAE's foreign minister declared to CNN, "The old energy map is being rewritten tonight. No single nation will hold the world hostage to one sliver of water, not again." In a single move, the UAE not only abandoned OPEC's quotas, it dared the world to follow. While Saudi Arabia hesitated and Iran gambled, Abu Dhabi seized the moment, positioning itself as a champion of reliability in chaos. This wasn't a war declaration, but it was a direct, very public challenge to Iran's regional chokehold. The market took notice. Prices didn't just move. They started to fracture. In that dark desert hour, Abu Dhabi had forced a historic reset the world could no longer ignore. For global leaders and oil traders, the crisis is algebra, percentages, barrels, insurance premiums. But for ordinary people, the fallout is counted in everyday struggles, right at home. Within 72 hours of the first Iranian demands, fuel prices shot upward. In Mumbai, tuk-tuk drivers lined up for hours only to discover the pumps had raised their rates twice in a single day. In France, commuter trains quietly announced temporary disruptions, code for rationed diesel and delayed deliveries. Families in the U.S. Midwest watched the cost of a gallon spike to levels not seen in years. A single fill-up drained $20 more from weekly budgets, but the pain wasn't confined to the gas station. In Tokyo, a refrigerated container of imported fruit sat on a dock, delayed as shipping schedules scrambled. Grocers from London to Lagos faced warnings from suppliers. Meats, bread, and even rice could see shelf prices jump, not due to crop failure, but due to energy surcharges stacking up along each stage of the supply chain. In Brazil, small manufacturers in the plastics industry braced for layoffs, squeezed by soaring feedstock costs. Personal stories trickled in as headlines faded. A Rotterdam trucker, Anja, shared on social media how a €1,500 fuel bill meant skipping a family weekend. In Johannesburg, a teacher's WhatsApp group traded links for carpooling public transport, swamped by demand, doubled ticket prices overnight. An Indian chemist, watching news on his phone, realized his critical medicines might not arrive before stocks ran out. Everything is energy. Energy market blackmail may sound distant, but it is ruthlessly local. Every extra dollar spent on oil seeps into food, power, transportation, and wages. Jobs are at stake, airlines cut routes. Factories slow shifts, truckers consider quitting, retailers postpone hiring. In some smaller economies, central banks panic as inflation expectations spiral higher each day. And these effects don't trickle, they cascade. The further from the Strait of Hormuz you live, the less time you have to prepare, because the ripples move faster than governments can reassure, and by the time you feel the pinch, the crisis has already moved 2 steps further. This is how a decision made at sea lands on every kitchen table everywhere. Beneath the headlines and above the world's most crucial sea lanes, a silent clock began to tick, a countdown that every energy analyst, oil executive, and Navy admiral knew couldn't be rewound. Inside the vast tank farms of Iran and its neighbors, storage gauges inched ever closer to full. Maritime intelligence firm Clapler warned, as of this morning, Iran has no more than 16 days before every available crude storage tank reaches capacity. When the storage tops out, wells will be forced to shut in, a move industry veterans call the point of no return, as lost pressure means some wells might never fully recover production. Meanwhile, on the refined product side, refineries in India, South Korea, and Southern Europe are burning through their safety stockpiles at record pace. We calculate only 8 days of uninterrupted supply remain unless new oil comes in, stated the Asian Petroleum Association. Logistics managers describe desperate calls to suppliers, some offering double or triple usual rates for guaranteed delivery, if a cargo can make it through Hormuz at all. For global shipping, the clock is even more aggressive. Vessels idled off the coast can't linger forever. Charter contracts expire in less than 6 days after, which owners can reroute to alternative, marginally safer routes, but at immense cost and only with limited capacity, as for gasoline at the pump. Consumer fuel analysts forecast a 5% rise per week until a resolution appears. We're seeing the fastest pass-through to consumer prices since the 2008 crash, reported Reuters, with inflation dominoing through every stage of the supply chain. This isn't just a short-term squeeze. Hopefully they turn the oil back on soon, mutters one shipbroker. If not, the world will spend years clawing back capacity we lost in a panic. Every day, more barriers go up, insurance bans, embargo rumors, new regulations. Bizarre scenes unfold, aging tankers repurposed as floating storage, backup pipelines running at breakneck speed. Each stopgap measure buys just a few more hours. The message from every analyst is clear. Time is the enemy. The longer this crisis drags, the smaller and more expensive tomorrow's recovery becomes. For Iran, for the Gulf, and for the world's consumers, every hour without a solution isn't neutral. It's a step closer to shortages, inflation, and consequences that no deal can fully undo. The clock is ticking, and nobody knows how much sand remains in the glass. As Iran's gamble and the way's defection reshape the strait, the rest of the global energy map has begun to rattle. The world's most familiar alliances are fracturing almost in real time, and new players are rushing to seize gaps in the old order. OPEC, long the grand orchestrator of world oil, now looks as cracked as a frozen lake. In spring, within hours of the way's exit, Kuwaiti officials went silent, refusing to reaffirm their quotas. Saudi Arabia's response. A carefully worded statement that was widely read as both an attempt at reassurance and a warning of possible future exits. Goldman Sachs analysts described the situation bluntly. We expect 3 or more OPEC members to publicly test the limits of cohesion in the next 2 weeks. But this is just the beginning. The energy crisis has triggered a scramble for alternative supply routes. The Waze-Fujairah pipeline isn't the only arrow in the quiver. Kazakhstan is fast-tracking its Trans-Caspian pipeline to send oil to Turkey, bypassing Russian choke points. African producers, Nigeria, Angola, even Ghana, are quietly courting Western buyers with promises of stability and no blackmail. The world's old oil geography is being redrawn, and the old confidence that oil will always find a market is suddenly being replaced by fierce competition for every safe route. Nowhere is the shift more dramatic than in the great power rivalry. China, heavily dependent on Gulf crude, has begun quietly finalizing long-term contracts with West African producers, while Russia, sanctioned and sidelined from Western markets, has opened new barter deals with Iran, trading technology for discounted crude. In a clear sign of opportunism, Moscow announced it is ready to stabilize global supply, a not-so-subtle attempt to fill the vacuum left by Iran and even the Waze defection. European governments, terrified of energy starvation, are reaching out everywhere: Washington, Riyadh, even Caracas, looking for a diversified basket of supply, no matter the political cost. The U.S. shale sector is working overtime, but domestic politics and export limits keep new barrels from arriving fast enough to plug the gap. What was once a carefully managed energy order, the world of OPEC, predictable flows, reliable superpowers, is dissolving into a messy marketplace of rival blocs, each trying to shield its people from the next shock. The dominoes are still falling, and nobody, not even the loudest capitals in the West or the East, can claim to know where they'll all finally land. Now, as leaders scramble and analysts race to adjust their forecasts, the world stares down an uncertain path with no easy exits, only a series of dangerous forks in the road. Each scenario brings as much risk as relief, and no one knows which domino tips next. Scenario 1. Iran doubles down, faced with the Waze defiance and an unraveling. OPEC, Iran could escalate even further, mine additional straits, seize passing tankers, or hike the toll for safe passage. Its leaders may gamble that the world's appetite for oil will force a dirty deal, accepting currency swaps and de facto ransoms just to keep crude moving. But every day of disruption tightens the economic noose at home. Iran risks civil unrest, loss of political face, and if it goes too far, an outright international embargo or military standoff. If Iran blinks first, will it lose its only bargaining chip? Scenario 2. Open conflict or military escalation. All it takes is one provocation, a mistaken missile, a sunken tanker, or a shootout between patrol boats, and the standoff could ignite. The U.S. Fifth Fleet shades ever closer to the Strait, while European alliances quietly move vessels into escort positions. An open flashpoint could send oil prices spiking above $150 pressure, populations worldwide, and make diplomatic solutions nearly impossible. But escalation isn't just Iran versus the West. It risks pulling in Russia, China, and every Gulf neighbor living under fuel shock, who would risk total energy chaos to call Iran's bluff. Scenario 3. A new normal emerges. If neither side escalates, the world may simply adapt. Shippers might pay the ransom in yuan or crypto, the dollar's grip over oil could loosen for the first time in 50 years, and the market might fragment permanently. New supply routes, new alliances, and energy blocs could replace the OPEC era, more volatile but less easily captured by a single nation's leverage. Is this stability? Or just a shattered status quo waiting for the next crisis? None of these outcomes offer true safety. None are reversible without scars. In the end, someone must yield, but who blinks first, and at what cost to the rest of us? The suspense remains electric, and the clock is still ticking. If a single nation can seize the world's oil supply and force global powers to pay ransom at the mouth of a narrow gulf, what does that mean for the world's future? If billion-dollar supply chains spanning food, medicine, manufacturing, and daily life can be held hostage by an overnight decree, are any of us truly secure? Tonight, oil is the weapon. Tomorrow, it might be rare earth metals, grain, or semiconductors, each one critical to modern life, each one vulnerable at a choke point outside our control. Are we entering an era where every vital artery, sea lanes, fiber cables, even the cloud can be threatened by a toll, a blockade, or a digital wire cut? What does this mean for nations that don't have the power to build pipelines or launch navies? As prices climb, tempers fray, and old alliances fracture, one simple reality hangs over every household and boardroom: the age of frictionless global trade may be ending. In its place, a world with new risks, new costs, and new gambles emerges. So the real question remains: if tonight's oil can be held hostage, what about tomorrow's lifeline? And who will draw the lines of power in the decades to come? Stay with us. The next move could change everything. One thing is clear: the old rules are gone, and every nation, company, and household now plays on a chessboard no textbook ever mapped. Iran's gamble and the way's lightning response have shattered the energy status quo, sending aftershocks through every part of the global economy. The next decisions made in boardrooms and war rooms will shape not just oil prices, but the future of everyday life. Don't blink, because this crisis is still unfolding. If you want to stay ahead of the next move, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. The next chapter could drop when you least expect it. Stay tuned.